Welcome to the channel, everyone. My name is Nick. For those that are new to the channel, hopefully by the end of this video, you do become a subscriber. So we have been talking about the potential around XRP. What is XRP going to hit in terms of value this cycle? And can XRP do the unthinkable? Can it flip Ethereum? Can it challenge Bitcoin? Everyone has been talking about this for years and years and years, and everyone's been trying to predict what's going to happen with XRP. But no one is going to be right on this, including myself. And I'm going to be the first one to admit that, I don't know what XRP is going to do this cycle. I don't know what Bitcoin is going to do this cycle. We take it one day at a time and we go off of what the price data is telling us. But one thing that I will say, and one thing that we do know, is that XRP so far has been defying all odds, right? Like if we go back a year ago, and we said that XRP was going to be trading at $2.40 while Ethereum was going to be trading at $2,000, people would say, you're crazy. Because for XRP to be this high in value while Ethereum is at half of the value that it was back in March of 2024, it's wild. XRP right now is roughly $100 billion away in terms of market cap from flipping Ethereum, which is just insane to me. And a lot of people will look at this and say, yeah, it doesn't really matter though. But if we go back a year ago or 2 years ago, or let's go all the way back to 2021, what XRP is doing today is quite shocking. But what it could do is even crazier. And we have to talk about that and we have to address it. So let's start off with the big discussion that's happening right now around crypto, which is Bitcoin, right? So Larry Fink recently predicted Bitcoin and, saying that it could go to $500,000, $700,000 per Bitcoin, which is kind of wild. And again, this is something that I've always stated. When we look at what these big players are saying about Bitcoin, they say these types of things to get everyone's focus on one thing so that you're distracted and you're focused on this. This isn't one of the newer price predictions around Bitcoin. Remember this one just recently where Bitwise's CIO claimed that Bitcoin will cross $1 million by 2029? I bring these two up because I want to actually address these two. I want to talk about, how crazy these predictions sound on paper versus, for an example, like an XRP price prediction of it hitting $10 to $20 or even $30. But let's dive on into this video clip and listen closely to it. This goes back to Davos from January.
If you're frightened of your debasement of your currency, or you're frightened of your economic or political stability of your country, you can have an internationally based instrument called Bitcoin that will overcome those local fears. And so I'm a big believer in the utilization of that as an instrument. And so if that becomes true and you see that it could be a proper hedge against maybe hope security or equities. Yeah. The question is, could you see a 2 or 5% allocation? I was with a sovereign wealth fund during this week, and that was the conversation. Should we have a 2% allocation? Should we have a 5% allocation? If everybody adopted that conversation, but it would be 500,000, 600,000, 700,000 per Bitcoin.
But does it also?
I'm not promoting it, by the way. So that is not my promotion.
Now, of course, he does say that that's not his prediction or promotion in his words, but it's the idea that we're continuously seeing Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Bitcoin. Meanwhile, if we actually think about what XRP has achieved so far in just the last 1 year compared to Bitcoin, I mean, it's pretty clear that we shouldn't have been focused on Bitcoin, which I've said for the last 2, 3, 4 years now. But also, Bitwise is very adamant about the fact that Bitcoin will cross $1 million by at least 2029.
My favorite view of the value of Bitcoin
on a long-term basis is to look at the size of the market it's going after. I think Bitcoin is well on its way to disrupting gold. That's a $20 trillion market. I think it's going to be used for international transaction and cross-border transactions. That's another many trillion-dollar market. And then you can divide that by the number of Bitcoin and you end up with a target amount. At Bitwise, we think it's going to cross $1 million by 2029. I think from a shorter term perspective, you can just look at supply and demand in the market, right? The big criticism of Bitcoin is the price is set by supply and demand, but that's also a real benefit when you're in a market like today, where again, we're producing 160,000 Bitcoin a year and ETFs are buying 500,000, right? Something has to give. And I think what gives is price resistance and ultimately it goes higher.
I think every pension fund should be allocated to Bitcoin. When I was a reporter, I covered just how so many of these pension funds are essentially underwater. It's so sad. But I heard actually, and I'm curious if you could tell me if this is true, that let's say there's a pension fund interested in allocating to Bitcoin. They actually have to go out and meet with a consultant for the consultant to do due diligence on Bitcoin. And that could take months and months. And if the consultant says, no, you shouldn't invest in it, then they just pass on it. Is that true? Are there gatekeepers?
It's mostly true. Yeah. So, I mean, the deep institutional investor market is a market with tier after tier after tier, because those people want their jobs. And if it goes wrong, they want someone to point at and say it was their fault. That said, we've been working with a number of consultants for a significant number of years, and many of them are already allocating. That's why you're starting to see this bubble up through the end. I'll add one more thought from an institutional perspective, because I think people overlook it. Crypto's a $3 trillion market right now. If you have a 0% allocation to crypto, you're effectively short. Right. When we talk about people allocating 1 or 2% to Bitcoin, that's just to get to neutral. And I think institutions are starting to recognize that. Once you accept it as part of this pie, you need to have at least a little bit, or you're making an active bet against it. And they're not comfortable doing that either. So I think you're going to see this 1-2% thing really take off at the institutional level over the next few years.
Now, what's crazy about this is, if we're really looking at this market from this perspective, what would XRP be valued at? Because we know institutional DeFi and tokenization is not going to be happening on Bitcoin. It's just not. Okay? If Bitcoin is going to go to $1 million by 2029, wouldn't it sound far more predictable to say that XRP would be hitting $50 or even $100 by 2029? I know that sounds ridiculous right now, but so does a $1 million Bitcoin by 2029. But if we think about how much will be tokenized on chain, how much will be traded on chain, these price predictions of, all right, well, Bitcoin will go to $1 million because of this, that, whatever. A lot of the reasons for Bitcoin to go to a specific amount is just supply and demand. But what about actual utility, institutional grade utility? This is why I've always said that XRP it's one of those underdogs that are really not focused on. I said it here, and I said this back in September, that BlackRock and major institutions keep pushing the Bitcoin and Ethereum hype machine to the retail sector. They're doing this as a way to distract and divert the attention away from the real value in this space. And I still believe this to this day. And I even said that you were told multiple times now that the focus is tokenization. Do you really think that the world could be tokenized on Ethereum? I'm not trying to mention Bitcoin here because, let's just be honest, it has failed as a viable network for financial use cases. So when we think about this, right, we look at what networks can be utilized at scale for financial grade use cases. And by 2029, all of the institutions will be here. Tokenization will be in the trillions of dollars. But it's not going to be on Bitcoin or Ethereum. So what does that mean XRP would be valued at? It has to be worth trillions of dollars, in my opinion. Now, when we think about that, right, even the Bitcoin maxis are now starting to cave. Da Vinci Jeremy, one of the biggest Bitcoin maxis out there, recently just said XRP equals plus 20 USD each. I'll admit, XRP is about to break $3. I know, I'm not a fan either, but technical analysis doesn't care about my opinions. Will it hit $20? Maybe. The market doesn't always follow logic, but it sure knows how to surprise us. Think it's impossible? Think again. Now, I'm not going to play the video clip because it's just ridiculous, but he's basically just saying, hey, TA could, be right here and XRP could hit $20. One individual from the space, Credible Crypto, has been very focused, actually hyper-fixated on the fact that XRP would hit $20 to $30. He's always had this mindset. Back in 2020 to 2021, he also had the same prediction. Now, did that happen? No, but what also happened during that time was the SEC lawsuit. Now there's nothing in the way of stopping XRP from going absolutely crazy. Now, will this Elliott wave theory play out where Bitcoin hits $175,000 roughly this cycle and XRP hits, $20 to $30? It could definitely happen. I'm not predicting this, but, could it be a possibility? 100%. I've always given you guys my straight up viewpoint on XRP. I said here, my main bull target zone is about $5 to $7. I know that sounds low, but I also have an extreme target zone of $10 to $15. That's like the max bullish case from my overall view. Now, this is an older view. This is an older, breakdown of XRP, because if we look at the dominance, XRP's dominance wasn't even at 2.7% then. And I did follow through with 4, 5, and even 12%. Now, what's crazy about this is XRP's dominance is currently at 5.11%. If this is going to continue to break out, the next target would be about 6.08%, followed by 9.37%, and the next crucial level is targeting 2019's major resistance level of 12.31%. For the sake of just, making sure that we go off of a base level here, I did follow through with 12%. With 12%, and if we're going to hit $5 to $7 trillion for the total crypto market cap, we could go higher. That would mean that XRP would be valued at roughly 10.48, so like almost $10.50, to about $14.69. So again, this is why I've said that extreme target zone of $10 to $15 could definitely be hitting. But what about $20 to $30 per XRP? Is that a possibility? Well, I think right now, and this is why I said in the beginning of this video that not even myself included will be able to get this right. Because Ethereum is losing massive amounts of dominance to XRP and additional altcoins. And XRP is so close to flipping Ethereum in terms of not just market cap, but breaking out against the Ethereum pair. This is the monthly view. XRP is absolutely dominating Ethereum right now on this chart, breaking out of highs going all the way back to December and November of 2020. We have about 8 days, almost 9 days, until this chart actually closes the highest monthly candle since going all the way back to 2020, April of 2020. That's how bullish XRP actually is at this current moment in time. Now, I didn't even mention anything outside of TA that could drive this. Like, for an example, the ETF approvals. Brad Garlinghouse recently said on Bloomberg that he assumes all XRP ETFs will be approved by the end of this year. We're talking about 18 different ETF filings. XRP, believe it or not, right now, whether or not you are a XRP holder or an XRP hater, XRP is one of the most bullish digital assets in this space right now. And that's why we have Bitcoin maxis even capitulating on their original view that XRP is a scam, XRP is this, XRP is that. But it's also at the same exact time that we are, continuing to see the Bitcoin hype. Nobody's actually talking about XRP from the institutional side. We see partnerships happening behind the scenes with Ripple, but nobody's actually talking about XRP in a very positive way. And I don't think that that's going to happen until XRP breaks over $4, starts to be trading between $5 to $10, and continues to absolutely melt faces. I believe that XRP is going to surprise a lot of people, and I think that's going to happen in a very quick fashion as well. Very similar back to 2017, 2018, because if we're really thinking about this logically, okay, and we look back in time during that entire, move to $3.84 roughly. It was not that long of a move. It happened in roughly 1 month. You were either, already packed in terms of your XRP bags, or you got completely sidelined. And I do think that that's the exact same thing happening now. But this move will completely overshadow 2017, 2018's move because of how much money is in this market now, how much institutional focus is in this market as well. The ETFs I didn't even mention around XRP as well, which we have to mention, right? Those ETFs are going to be a big price driver, big volume driver as well. I mean, this entire space right now is starting to shift towards utility. And this is why I think that while we hear these talks about Bitcoin hitting 500,000, 700,000, 1 million, the real question we should be asking is, if Bitcoin can do that with absolutely zero utility, what could XRP do with, an absolute massive amount of unlimited, untapped potential when it comes to utility? So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, definitely leave a like, subscribe, to notifications on because more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord down in the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.